Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Published in 1939 during the Great Depression, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck is not only one of the most celebrated novels in American literature, but also one of the most politically charged and emotionally wrenching narratives of its time. It tells the story of the Joad family, tenant farmers displaced from Oklahoma by drought, economic hardship, and the mechanization of agriculture, who travel west to California in search of a better life. With its blend of stark realism and lyrical prose, Steinbeck exposed the exploitation of migrant workers and the collapse of the American dream for millions of people. The novel won the Pulitzer Prize in 1940 and was cited prominently when Steinbeck received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962. It was also controversial. Its sympathetic portrayal of the working poor and its criticism of banks, landowners, and big business led to public outcry and even bans in some parts of the United States. But Steinbeck's depiction of the human spirit's resilience amidst systemic oppression remains just as powerful today. Themes of poverty, injustice, dignity, and solidarity drive the narrative forward, weaving together personal and societal struggles. The novel shifts between the story of the Joads and intercalary chapters that provide a broader context, forming a mosaic of suffering and perseverance in a time of unprecedented hardship. The land is dry. The dust hangs in the air like a curtain, unmoving, choking every breath of life from the Oklahoma soil. In this parched landscape, Tom Joad is returning home. Paroled after serving 4 years in McAlester State Penitentiary for homicide, he hitchhikes along the dusty roads toward his family's farm. His boots crunch over cracked earth. His eyes scan the horizon for something familiar, something unchanged. He walks with a quiet edge, hardened by prison, wary but curious about what home now means. He meets Jim Casey, a former preacher turned wanderer, who speaks in long, philosophical tones about sin, redemption, and the soul of man. Casey no longer believes in preaching, he believes in people. He believes that holiness might not be in solitary prayer, but in being among the suffering. Together, they walk toward the Joad farm, unaware that nothing is as Tom remembers it. When they arrive, the house is abandoned. Silent, dust has claimed the corners. The fields are overgrown. A neighbor, Muley Graves, tells them what happened. The banks have repossessed the land. The Joads have been evicted. The landowners, pressured by the banks, pushed the tenant farmers off their fields and brought in tractors, machines that show no respect for soil or soul. Muley stayed behind, living like a ghost, scavenging off the land, while the rest of the Joads made plans to leave. Tom listens in silence. His home is gone, but not the people. Muley tells him that the Joads are staying with Uncle John and plan to head west to California, where flyers promise work, abundance, and a fresh start. A land of plenty. Grapes so thick on the vine you can pick them for days. Fields of cotton and orchards of peaches waiting for hands. It's hope, raw and simple. Tom finds his family at Uncle John's. They are surprised and overjoyed to see him, though their excitement is tempered by the reality of the journey ahead. Pa Joad is no longer the central authority. Ma has taken quiet command, holding the family together with a strength forged not in talk, but in presence. She is the heart of the Joads, fierce and unwavering, eyes that see far beyond the road. The family prepares for the journey west. They pool their meager savings and buy a battered Hudson Super 6, converting it into a truck to carry all 12 of them: Tom, Ma, Pa, Grandpa, Grandma, Uncle John, Noah, Al, Rose of Sharon, her husband Connie, Ruthie, and Winfield. Each person, each item packed, each whispered prayer represents something they can't leave behind. But already, loss hovers like a shadow. Grandpa refuses to leave his land, so they slip him a sedative, lift him gently into the truck, and drive away. The first leg of the journey is hot and long. Highway 66, the Great Mother Road, stretches west like a lifeline for the desperate. Other families ride along it too, the dispossessed lined up like ants marching to an uncertain promise. They meet strangers who share food and stories of heartbreak, of dying children, of work that doesn't exist in the fields of California. One man speaks of betrayal, of getting there only to find hundreds of others already waiting, already hungry, already cheated. Ma hears it, holds it inside, and carries on. Grandpa dies on the road not long after they leave. The old man who once boasted of eating grapes off the vine while bathing in a creek is buried in a handmade grave beside the road. They scrawl a note on his shroud in case someone finds him. There is no time for mourning, not with 2,000 miles still to go. The family presses forward. At every stop, more stories, more warning signs. The mechanical strain begins to show as well. The truck overheats, tires blow out. Al, the young and impulsive brother who fancies himself a mechanic, does his best to hold things together. But it's not just bolts and belts that are cracking. It's the very idea that California will be the promised land. The vision begins to dull. But Ma, always Ma, insists they move forward. Her quiet determination carries more weight than any sermon Casey ever preached. As they reach the desert edges of the Southwest, the family grows smaller. Noah, the eldest son, slow and quiet, wanders off by a river and does not return. He says he's not made for the journey, for society, for what comes next. He simply walks away. Uncle John, tormented by his own guilt and sins, drinks to forget. Rose of Sharon, young and pregnant, begins to sense that her dreams of a cozy house and a bright future with Connie may never come true. But still, they push on. The desert is dry and merciless. The road is crowded with jalopies, with families holding on to hope like a blanket worn thin. The Joads are not unique, they are one of thousands. And that realization begins to grow in Casey's mind. There is power in this mass of suffering. There is a voice waiting to rise. As the sun beats down on their truck and the California border looms ahead, the Joads begin to understand that they are not merely fleeing something, they are part of something larger. A tide, a migration, a reckoning. The truck rattles along the unforgiving road, a weary traveler itself. The horizon ahead is a blur of heat and dust, the air rippling in waves like a mirage, promising something just out of reach. The Joad family presses on, a unit of quiet determination bound together by their shared struggle. But with each mile, the reality of their journey becomes more apparent. The road to California is long, and the promises they once believed in, of a better life, of work, of safety, now seem more like distant fantasies. Ma Joad remains the pillar of strength for the family, her resolve unyielding. Every few miles, she holds the family together with little more than a quiet word or a glance, making sure that everyone stays focused on what they've set out to do. Her hands, weathered from years of labor, still move with the grace and power of a woman who knows how to survive. Pa, once the head of the family, has taken a backseat as Ma's quiet authority grows stronger. He's worn down, tired, unsure of what comes next. The weight of his failures hangs heavy on him, and his sense of pride is eroded by the steady march of time and misfortune. Tom, ever the outsider in his own family, struggles with the idea of home. The life he once knew feels like it's slipping further away with each passing day. His thoughts linger on his past, his time in prison, the violence that led to his conviction. There's a quiet anger simmering beneath his calm exterior, a resentment for the injustices that have plagued his life and the lives of his loved ones. The road, for Tom, is both an escape and a prison. It offers the possibility of something new, but it also serves as a reminder of how far he's fallen. The journey west is not just a physical one, but a psychological one as well. It tests their resilience in ways they hadn't anticipated. At every stop, the Joads encounter other families, all of them displaced and hungry, their hopes as fragile as the cardboard signs they hold out at the roadside. One man tells them of his journey to California, a place that promises work, but offers little more than a cruel lie. They got people there, he says, lots of folks just like you. They won't let you in unless you got work to show for it. And even then, they won't pay you enough to feed your kids. The stories they hear are grim, but they can't afford to stop. They can't afford to turn back. Ma, ever the optimist, refuses to let the bleakness of these stories take root in her heart. She believes in the promise of California, even as it starts to feel like an illusion. Her faith in the land, in the idea of a better future, is the one thing keeping her from succumbing to despair. As the Joads near the California border, the landscape changes. The flat, barren desert begins to give way to the rolling hills and orchards of the Golden State. The sun burns hot, casting long shadows over the land, but there is a promise in the air, a sense that something is waiting for them. It's hard to tell if it's hope or desperation that drives them onward. All they know is that California is where they need to be. The Joads, like so many others, are just one small part of the Great Migration, a tide of humanity desperately searching for a place to call home. But when they finally cross into California, the world they find is not the land of milk and honey they were promised. It's a land of competition and exploitation. The promises on the flyers, with their bold letters proclaiming high wages and easy work, are nothing but a cruel joke. The Joads are greeted not by open arms, but by hostility and indifference. They are told that there is no work to be found, that the fields are already full, that there is nothing left for them. The people who once welcomed strangers now view them as a threat, as competition for the dwindling resources that remain. The reality of California hits them hard. They find work in the fields, but the pay is miserly, and the conditions are brutal. The families they encounter here are no different from the Joads. They are broken and battered by a system that offers no reprieve. The landowners, who control everything, pay as little as they can get away with, and the workers, who are desperate for anything, have no choice but to accept whatever scraps are thrown their way. It's a cycle of exploitation that seems endless. The Joads are faced with a harsh truth. The land of opportunity they dreamed of is a lie. California is no different from the land they left behind. The promise of work and prosperity is hollow, and they are no better off than they were in Oklahoma. The world they live in is one of cruelty and exploitation, where the strong prey on the weak and the poor are left to fend for themselves. Rose of Sharon, pregnant and hopeful, begins to feel the weight of this new reality. Her dreams of a bright future for herself and her child are slipping away, replaced by the harshness of the world around her. She feels the burden of the family's hopes resting on her shoulders, but she's beginning to see that even hope may not be enough to carry them through. The Joads are no longer just survivors of their circumstances. They are part of a much larger system, a system that is indifferent to their suffering. They are not alone in their struggle, but the sense of solidarity they once had begins to fray. The workers in the fields are pitted against one another, fighting for the scraps left behind by the landowners. There is no unity in their suffering, only competition and division. The Joads are caught in the middle, unsure of how to move forward. Ma Joad, however, refuses to give up. Her strength becomes the glue that holds the family together. Even in the face of overwhelming adversity, she continues to press forward, believing that there is something more to life than just surviving. For Ma, survival is not enough. She is fighting for dignity, for the right to exist without being crushed by the weight of the world. In this fight, she is not just fighting for her family, but for every family that has been forced to live in the margins of society. And so, the Joads continue. Their journey is far from over, and the road ahead remains uncertain. But with each passing day, they are learning that the true battle is not just against the forces that oppress them. It's also against the forces that threaten to tear them apart from within. The struggle is one of survival, but it's also one of humanity, of holding on to what makes them who they are, even when everything else seems to be slipping away. The road ahead is long, and the fight is far from over. But for the Joads, it's a fight they are willing to face together. The horizon stretches endlessly ahead, the road winding like a serpent through the barren landscape of California. For the Joad family, every mile brings them closer to a world that promises opportunity, but only delivers hardship. The heat of the day seems to settle in their bones, the oppressive weight of uncertainty hanging over them like a dark cloud. They press on, drawn by the hope of finding a place where they can put down roots and rebuild what they've lost. But with each passing day, that hope begins to erode, replaced by the grim reality that no matter how hard they fight, they are always one step away from defeat. Ma Joad, ever the matriarch, remains the heart of the family. Her determination is unwavering, her spirit a steady force that keeps the family moving forward. She watches over each member of the Joad family with a fierce, protective love, and she never lets anyone lose sight of the goal, survival. Her resolve is what keeps them going, even when hope seems out of reach. She carries within her the quiet strength of a woman who has known hardship all her life, and yet refuses to be beaten. It is this inner strength that becomes the cornerstone of the Joad family's survival as they face the challenges ahead. Tom, still grappling with his past and the anger that simmers just beneath his calm exterior, begins to see the ways in which his family's struggles mirror the larger social injustices at play. He's learned firsthand about the brokenness of the justice system, about how the powerful use fear and violence to control the powerless. As he spends more time in the fields of California, he begins to understand that the fight is not just for survival. It's a fight for dignity, for respect, for the very right to exist. His sense of justice grows stronger, and he becomes increasingly aware of the need for solidarity among workers if they are ever going to change the system that oppresses them. The workers in the fields are a varied group, each of them carrying their own story of hardship and loss. They are bound together by a shared fate, but there is little unity among them. The landowners have succeeded in creating a sense of division, in turning the workers against each other, making them fight for the smallest scraps of work and pay. There is an unspoken tension among the workers, a sense of competition that prevents them from coming together as a force strong enough to challenge the status quo. As the Joads settle into their new lives, the realization that work is scarce and the wages offered are pitiful begins to settle in. They live in squalid conditions, cramped in makeshift camps where the dust never seems to settle, and the air is thick with the smell of sweat, desperation, and the sharp tang of fear. There is little to offer them in the way of comfort or security. Yet, despite this, Joad continues to make sure her family feels a semblance of normalcy. She manages to make meals from the few scraps they can gather and holds together the fragile sense of home that they've managed to carve out. The difficulties of life in the camps become increasingly evident as the Joads struggle to find steady work. Everywhere they go, the story is the same. The landowners have created an environment of scarcity, offering just enough work to keep people from starving, but never enough to allow them to thrive. The wages are so low that it's almost impossible to save anything for the future. The workers are trapped in a cycle of exploitation, where their labor is used to fuel the system that keeps them on the edge of survival. The Joads find themselves caught in this cycle, unable to escape the grip of poverty and despair. The longer they stay in the camps, the more they begin to understand the true nature of the system they're up against. The workers are kept in line through fear of losing their jobs, fear of being blacklisted, fear of being cast out into the wilderness with nothing. The landowners hold all the power, and the workers have little choice but to accept the crumbs that are offered to them. For Rose of Sharon, the weight of her pregnancy becomes more difficult to bear as the conditions grow harsher. She clings to the idea of a better future for herself and her child, but it begins to feel increasingly distant, almost unattainable. She is consumed by her own fear, the fear of bringing a child into a world that seems so unforgiving. But her love for her family, for the life that she has created, keeps her going. Her role in the family begins to evolve as she realizes that she may be the key to their survival, to holding the family together in the face of overwhelming adversity. One of the most tragic elements of the Joad's experience in California is the loss of their sense of community. Back home in Oklahoma, they were part of a larger network of family and neighbors, a community that looked out for one another. But in California, they find themselves isolated, strangers in a strange land. The camps are divided into factions, with little to no support for those who are struggling. The workers are forced to fend for themselves, without the solidarity that once helped them survive. It is clear now that the Joads are part of a larger migration, a movement of displaced people, all trying to survive in a world that has turned its back on them. They are not just struggling for themselves, but for everyone who has been forced to leave their homes, who has been driven to the brink of despair by the forces of greed and exploitation. The Joad's fight is not just a personal one, it is part of a much larger struggle, one that spans the entire country. Despite the hardships they face, there is still a flicker of hope that burns within the Joads. Joad continues to be the anchor for the family, providing the love and strength that they need to survive. She refuses to let them give up, to let them succumb to the forces that would tear them apart. Her resilience is a testament to the power of the human spirit, to the belief that, no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always something worth fighting for. Tom, too, begins to see his place in this larger struggle. His awareness of the injustice around him grows, and he understands that the fight for survival is not just about finding work or food. It's about standing up to the systems that perpetuate inequality and oppression. As the Joads continue their journey, they begin to realize that their struggle is not just about surviving. It's about changing the world around them, making it a place where people are no longer exploited for the benefit of the few. The road ahead is long and the path is uncertain. But for the Joads, the fight is far from over. They will continue as they always have, because they have no other choice. The journey will be difficult, but as long as they have each other, they will endure. The flames of hope, though flickering and fragile, still burn bright. As the Joad family trudges deeper into the vast, desolate landscape of California, the weight of their collective struggle becomes harder to bear. The dry earth stretches endlessly, mirroring the hopelessness they feel. It's a stark contrast to the lush, fertile land they had dreamed of finding. Instead of the prosperity they expected, the Joads encounter only despair, exploitation, and betrayal at every turn. With each passing day, the California promised to them by the stories they'd heard begins to feel more like a mirage, something unreachable, a fleeting vision that disappears once they get close enough to grasp it. The camps where the Joads find temporary shelter are crowded and makeshift, filled with families just like theirs, dispossessed, broken, and lost. Yet, despite the grim conditions, the sense of unity among the displaced workers becomes something they can cling to. They share meals, stories, and advice, their conversations tinged with both bitterness and hope. Here, in the dirt and dust, the Joads begin to see the bond that ties them to the other families, a shared struggle for survival, a collective experience of suffering. This sense of community, however fragile, offers a semblance of comfort, something to hold onto amidst the cruelty of their situation. For Ma Joad, this bond is essential. As the family's matriarch, she feels the weight of responsibility more keenly than anyone. She is the glue that holds the family together, her determination and sense of purpose unwavering. Even when the situation becomes dire, when their resources are dwindling and tensions are rising, Ma continues to be the rock on which her family relies. She never lets them forget that, despite the hardships, they must stay united. Her quiet strength becomes even more apparent as she navigates the growing instability within the camp. When trouble arises, whether it's a fight between workers or a dispute with the camp authorities, Ma is the first to step in. Her words of wisdom cutting through the noise of anger and frustration. She understands that unity, above all, is what will keep them alive. Tom, however, is beginning to feel the pull of something greater than family loyalty. His time in California has opened his eyes to the stark inequalities that exist not only in the land, but in the very systems that govern society. He sees, with growing clarity, the oppression that binds the workers to a life of suffering and fear. The wealthy landowners and their hired hands, employed to keep the poor in check, have no qualms about using violence and intimidation to ensure that the workers never rise up against them. Tom's anger, which has simmered beneath the surface for so long, begins to surface more openly. He is no longer just a man running from his past. He is becoming a voice for the voiceless, a figure who understands that the battle for survival is also a fight for justice, dignity, and the basic rights of the oppressed. It is in these moments of reflection that Tom's true growth becomes evident. He is no longer just a man trying to escape the consequences of his previous actions. He is becoming aware of the broader context of his existence, the way in which every individual's struggles are part of a larger, interconnected web of inequality. The workers, as Tom now realizes, are not just struggling for food or shelter. They are fighting for the right to exist with dignity. The harsh, unforgiving environment of California has stripped them of their humanity, reducing them to little more than cogs in a machine designed to serve the wealthy elite. Yet, even amidst the growing tension and awareness of the broader injustice, there is still a glimmer of hope that resides within the Joads. Despite everything they have lost, despite the odds stacked against them, they continue to fight, to hold onto the hope that things can improve. But with each passing day, that hope is challenged by the increasingly oppressive conditions they encounter. In the camps, they are constantly reminded of the fragile nature of their existence. The wages they earn are barely enough to scrape by, and the work they do is backbreaking, often dangerous, and always fleeting. No matter how hard they try, they are always one step away from falling into complete destitution. The authorities in the camps, many of them hired by the landowners to keep the workers in check, are no better than the system that oppresses the families they represent. They wield power over the displaced workers like an iron fist, using intimidation and threats to maintain order and prevent any kind of uprising. But even in the face of such brutality, the Joads and others like them are beginning to realize that they cannot remain passive for much longer. Rose of Sharon, who has been the most sheltered from the broader struggles of the family, begins to feel the weight of her own fears. Pregnant and vulnerable, she watches as the family continues to crumble under the pressure of their circumstances. Her personal dreams for the future dreams of a family and a better life are becoming increasingly distant. But in her, there is also a growing awareness that the personal and the political are not so easily separated. The choices she makes will affect not just her, but the entire family. Like Tom, Rose begins to understand that survival isn't just about personal will, it's about solidarity and sacrifice. As her pregnancy advances, so does her understanding of the importance of family, of unity, and the shared burden of responsibility. As tensions within the camps begin to rise, the Joads are forced to confront the fact that their journey isn't just about survival, it's about resistance. The workers are pushed to their limits, but they are also beginning to see the power they hold when they stand together. For Tom, this realization crystallizes in a powerful moment of clarity. The poor, the oppressed, and the disenfranchised have the potential to be more than just passive victims. They can rise up, speak out, and challenge the forces that oppress them. The Joad story in this moment becomes a microcosm of a larger struggle, one that is not confined to the workers in California, but spans the entire country. It is a struggle for justice, for equality, for the right to a life that isn't dictated by the whims of the rich and powerful. The landowners may hold the power, but the workers, when united, hold something far more powerful: their collective will to survive, to fight for their future, and to demand their place in the world. The path ahead is uncertain, but the Joads, like the thousands of other families in similar circumstances, are beginning to understand that the only way forward is through resistance. The promise of a better life in California may have been a lie, but the fight for justice is real, and it is one that they are determined to take up, no matter the cost. As the Joads continue their journey across California, the grim reality of their circumstances becomes increasingly clear. The promised land they had hoped to find is nothing like what they envisioned. The fertile, abundant farmland they had been told about is a distant dream, and the oppressive system of exploitation they encounter is far more brutal than they had imagined. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, the Joads, like many others, continue to push forward, holding on to the hope that somehow, against all expectations, their lives will improve. The Joad family, though struggling and divided by the harshness of their environment, is still bound by the strong ties of familial loyalty. Ma Joad remains the cornerstone of the family's emotional strength. Her sense of unity is unshakable, and she continues to push the family forward, reminding them that no matter how bleak things get, they must stay together. Her resilience and unwavering love for her family keep them going when the path ahead seems impossible. Ma's leadership, however, is beginning to feel the weight of the hardships they are facing. It's not just the physical labor that wears them down, but the emotional toll of being constantly on the move, searching for a place where they might find work, safety, and stability. The Joads, like so many other migrant families, are now victims of a system that treats them as disposable laborers. They are constantly at the mercy of unscrupulous farm owners and labor contractors who exploit their desperation. Even when they find work, it's never guaranteed or stable, and the wages they earn are barely enough to survive. They are caught in a cycle of poverty, constantly working just to survive from one day to the next. It is clear that, for the Joads, and for the thousands of others like them, California was never the land of opportunity it was promised to be. Tom, who has always been a man of action, is becoming increasingly aware of the systemic nature of their oppression. His awareness grows as he witnesses the way in which the workers, desperate for work and sustenance, are manipulated and divided. The landowners play the workers off one another, creating an environment of mistrust and fear. The rich have the power to dictate the terms of labor, and the workers, separated by differences in race, class, and even regional origins, are often too divided to unite in any meaningful way. This realization is painful for Tom, who had once believed in the power of individual action. Now, he sees that the struggle for justice is not something that can be won by individuals alone, but by a collective force, by workers coming together to demand their rights. At the same time, Tom begins to understand that the fight is not just for fair wages or better working conditions, but for a fundamental change in the way society is structured. The deep inequalities between the landowners and the workers cannot be bridged by individual effort alone. The workers must rise together as one to challenge the entire system that keeps them oppressed. For Tom, this realization marks the beginning of his transformation from a man struggling for personal survival into a figure willing to take on the larger struggle for social justice. As he interacts with other workers, listening to their stories and seeing their suffering, he is filled with a renewed sense of purpose. It is not enough to merely survive. They must fight for something greater, a life with dignity, equality, and hope. Ma Joad, too, begins to feel the emotional toll of their journey. As the family's caretaker, she has always carried the burden of ensuring their survival. But it is becoming harder and harder to maintain the optimism she once did. The endless cycle of moving from one camp to another, never finding lasting stability, is wearing her down. Her faith in the dream of California is slowly fading, and the family's survival becomes her only focus. Yet, even in these darkest moments, Ma continues to show immense strength. She understands that if she falls apart, the family will fall apart, and she will not allow that to happen. Her ability to keep the family together, emotionally and physically, is the key to their continued survival. The brutality of the migrant labor system is further underscored as the Joads encounter other families who are living in equally dire conditions. The camps where the workers are forced to live are overcrowded and unsanitary, and the authorities that oversee them are often indifferent, treating the workers with disdain and cruelty. The workers' plight is further compounded by the constant threat of violence from the police and vigilantes hired by the wealthy landowners. These authorities, whose job it is to maintain order, are more often than not an extension of the system that exploits the workers. They serve the interests of the landowners and use their power to keep the workers in line, quelling any attempts at resistance or organizing. In the face of such overwhelming adversity, the Joads begin to learn the harsh realities of the labor struggle. They are not the only ones who have been displaced. Thousands of other families are in the same position, all desperately searching for work and food. There is a growing sense of solidarity among the workers as they begin to realize that their fight is not just for survival, but for justice. The idea that they are not alone in their suffering becomes a source of strength for them. Yet, this realization also brings a new sense of urgency to their situation. The workers are no longer simply trying to survive. They are beginning to see that they must act before it is too late. At the same time, Rose of Sharon's pregnancy continues to weigh heavily on the family. She is becoming more and more desperate for a sense of stability, a place where she can give birth to her child and raise it in safety. But California, which had once held the promise of a better life, has proven to be a harsh and unforgiving place. Rose of Sharon's sense of hope is deeply intertwined with the future of her unborn child, and as her due date approaches, the family becomes more anxious. Ma continues to encourage her, reminding her that they will find a way to make it through, no matter what. Yet, there is an underlying tension in the air, a sense that things may soon take a tragic turn. As the Joads move from camp to camp, it becomes increasingly apparent that their survival is not just dependent on their ability to find work, but on their ability to navigate the complex system of oppression that governs the lives of migrant workers. They must learn to fight not just for food and shelter, but for the right to exist with dignity. The Joad's struggle is emblematic of the broader fight for justice taking place across California, and indeed, the entire country. They are part of a growing movement of displaced workers, seeking to overthrow the system that has failed them, seeking a life free from the chains of poverty and exploitation. It is a long, hard road ahead, but the Joads continue to press on, each step bringing them closer to the realization that their fight for survival is also a fight for something greater: the right to live with dignity, equality, and hope. As the Joads continue to drift through the barren lands of California, the challenges they face only become more evident, with each new day pushing them further into the depths of despair. The harsh realities of their situation, paired with the ever-present knowledge that survival is a battle against overwhelming odds, begin to chip away at their spirits. The once hopeful dreams they carried with them when they left Oklahoma, the promise of prosperity in a golden land, have begun to feel more like a cruel illusion. Still, the family's resolve, particularly Ma Joad's, remains steadfast. She continues to hold the family together, even as the world around them crumbles. The family's journey takes them to a series of migrant camps, each one more soul-crushing than the last. As they find work, it is never permanent, and it's never enough to lift them out of the cycle of poverty. They are caught in a system that forces them to live in squalor, with little to no hope of ever breaking free. The camps they stay in are overcrowded and unsanitary, with food scarce and conditions harsh. But for the Joads and the thousands of other migrant workers, the camps are better than the alternative, wandering the roads with no place to rest. Here, at least, there is some semblance of community, a shared sense of suffering and survival. Despite the grueling circumstances, the Joads continue to hold onto their humanity, their desire to protect one another, and their hope for a better future. But the strain of constant hardship begins to wear on them, and their unity is tested. The emotional toll of their journey is felt deeply by each member of the family, but perhaps none more than Ma Joad, who has been the emotional anchor for everyone. Her strength is tested as she begins to realize the enormity of what they are up against. Yet, even in the darkest moments, Ma Joad's resilience shines through. Her words, though sometimes tinged with despair, carry a sense of unyielding resolve. "We are the people," she says, a reminder that despite everything, they are part of something bigger than themselves. As they move from camp to camp, Tom Joad becomes more and more attuned to the larger forces at work. The injustice of the system is clear to him now. He sees the way the landowners and the wealthy elite manipulate the labor force, creating division among the workers, playing on their fears and differences, and ensuring that they will never rise up against the system. The workers are pitted against one another, forced to fight for scraps of work, competing for the same meager wages. The entire system is built on exploitation, and the Joads, like so many others, are trapped in its web. Tom's awareness of the social injustice around him deepens as he continues to encounter other workers, all of whom share the same sense of frustration and hopelessness. He hears the stories of their struggles, their personal losses, and their dreams of a better life, all dashed by the cruel reality of the system. And as he listens, Tom begins to understand that this isn't just about survival, it's about resistance. He sees that the only way to change their situation is through collective action, through solidarity among workers. The problem is not just the individual greed of the landowners, but the systemic oppression that keeps the workers in their place. Tom's awakening to the need for social change is also shaped by his growing sense of responsibility. He begins to feel that he has a duty not just to his family, but to the larger community of migrant workers. His sense of isolation begins to lift as he connects with others who share his values. And through these relationships, he becomes more determined to stand up for justice, even if it means putting himself at risk. The notion of individual survival is no longer enough for Tom. he realizes that the survival of the whole community is at stake, and he is willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Meanwhile, Rose of Sharon's pregnancy continues to loom over the family. She remains hopeful, clinging to the idea that once the baby is born, their lives will somehow stabilize. Yet the reality of the situation is more complicated than she can admit to herself. As the pregnancy progresses, Rose of Sharon becomes increasingly anxious, knowing that the lack of proper medical care and the harsh living conditions could jeopardize her health and the health of her baby. Her fear grows, but she tries to remain strong, focusing on the belief that her child will bring some kind of salvation, a symbol of hope in a world filled with despair. As Rose of Sharon's condition worsens, the family is forced to confront the gravity of their circumstances. There is no doctor to turn to, no hospital to provide care. They are on their own, with nothing but each other to rely on. Ma Joad, who has always been the bedrock of the family, steps in to take control of the situation, making decisions that she hopes will keep everyone safe. The burden of Rose of Sharon's pregnancy is not just a personal one, but a family one. And Ma knows that they must protect her, not just for her sake, but for the sake of the future that Rose of Sharon represents. The desperate situation in which the Joads find themselves serves as a powerful reminder of the larger forces at work in society, the forces that leave families like the Joads vulnerable, desperate, and powerless. The system that has driven them from their land, that has stripped them of their dignity and their hope, is a system that prioritizes profit over people, that sees individuals as nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. The Joads are not just victims of a personal tragedy, but of a broader social and economic order that exploits and oppresses the poor and dispossessed. Through it all, the Joads continue to move forward, their resilience carrying them through each day. But the road ahead is uncertain, and with every step, the weight of their struggle grows heavier. Yet, as they face the unimaginable, they continue to hold onto each other, refusing to let go of the bonds that tie them together. For the Joads, the fight for survival is not just about finding food or shelter. It is a fight for their dignity, their humanity, and their right to exist in a world that seems determined to crush them. They know that no matter how long the road may be, they must keep moving forward. The Joads' journey into the depths of California's agricultural heartland becomes increasingly marked by despair and disillusionment as they confront the vast inequalities of the system that holds them captive. It's no longer just a matter of survival in the sense of finding a roof over their heads or food to eat. The fight has become much larger. The Joad family, like thousands of other migrant families, are caught in the crossfire of a system that exploits and divides them. One designed to make sure that the workers who do the hard labor never gain the power to change their own lives. As they arrive at the cotton fields, their hopes begin to disintegrate, as they are once again confronted with a reality more grim than they ever imagined. At the heart of their struggles is Ma Joad, the emotional backbone of the family, whose strength and leadership become even more apparent as the days drag on. Even when it feels as though everything is falling apart, Ma remains resolute in keeping the family together. She is, in every sense, the family's glue, holding it together in the face of relentless adversity. Yet her own burden is growing heavier. While she is determined to keep spirits high, The strain of watching her family suffer, particularly her children, is taking its toll. The haunting question that begins to hang over the Joads is not just how to survive another day, but whether survival even means anything anymore. For Tom Joad, the reality of the situation grows clearer with each passing moment. The fleeting idea of prosperity that he and his family clung to when they left Oklahoma has long since been replaced with a bitter understanding that the world they entered is one where they have little to no say. The promise of California as a land of opportunity for farmers and workers alike seems like a lie. And Tom begins to see that the real enemy is not just the landowners and their greed, but a system that has been designed to oppress the powerless at every turn. As the Joads endure one setback after another, Tom's growing disillusionment becomes the driving force behind his eventual decision to act. Yet, even as Tom grows more politically aware, he also remains firmly tied to his family. He knows that the greatest source of their strength lies in their unity, and he will not allow anything, not even the system itself, to tear them apart. Tom's developing sense of justice and resistance builds on his growing sense of responsibility to others, not just his family. He begins to feel that if change is to happen, it must come from collective action, from workers standing together and demanding better conditions. His resolve hardens, and the injustice he witnesses in the camps becomes an overwhelming force, pushing him toward a future that he knows will require great sacrifice. At the same time, Rose of Sharon's pregnancy becomes an increasingly tragic focal point of the Joad's journey. Initially, Rose of Sharon's pregnancy seemed like a symbol of hope, a new life amidst the destruction and suffering. But as her health continues to deteriorate, the grim reality of their circumstances becomes impossible to ignore. The lack of proper medical care and the extreme conditions of the migrant camps weigh heavily on her. As her body weakens and she becomes more ill, the Joad's dreams of a better future seem increasingly distant. Rose of Sharon's situation represents the fragility of hope in a world that feels indifferent to their suffering. She becomes the embodiment of their shattered dreams, a stark reminder that no matter how much they hold onto each other, they are still at the mercy of forces much larger than themselves. The Joads continue to move from camp to camp, always searching for work, always clinging to the hope that something will improve. But each new camp only reveals a deeper layer of despair. The camps themselves are overcrowded, with families crammed into tiny spaces, fighting for access to basic resources. Disease spreads quickly, and the sense of community that had once provided a semblance of comfort begins to erode as competition for survival becomes more fierce. The workers are at the mercy of the camp authorities, who treat them with disdain and make it clear that they are nothing more than expendable resources to be used and discarded when they are no longer needed. Despite the crushing weight of these conditions, the Joads manage to hold onto their humanity in small but significant ways. Even as their circumstances worsen, they refuse to let go of the bonds of love and family. They share what little they have, even if it means sacrificing their own comfort for the sake of another. Ma Joad's unwavering determination to keep the family united and to shield her children from the worst of the world's cruelty is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. In a world where everything seems stacked against them, family's unity is their greatest asset, the one thing that cannot be taken from them, no matter how many hardships they face. The brutality of the landowners becomes even more apparent as the Joads encounter other workers, many of whom have fallen into despair. The economic system that holds the Joads and others, like them, in perpetual poverty is designed to pit them against each other. The workers are given just enough to survive, but never enough to break free from the cycle. They are constantly forced to compete for work, to accept whatever wages the landowners offer, knowing that refusing would mean losing even the slim chance of a job. This vicious system keeps them divided, unable to unite for a common cause, as fear and desperation set in. The landowners have no interest in providing for their workers beyond the bare minimum. They are more concerned with maintaining their power and wealth. The injustice of this system is a constant presence, and it becomes impossible for Tom Joad to ignore. He knows that he can no longer just stand by and watch as the workers are exploited, as families like his own are broken down and forced to live in dehumanizing conditions. Tom begins to embrace a new sense of purpose, one that is rooted in the idea that the only way forward is through solidarity and collective action. He begins to understand that their survival depends on their ability to stand together, to resist the system that keeps them in chains. As tensions escalate, the Joad's already fragile situation begins to fracture. Tom's growing sense of justice leads him to make difficult decisions, choices that could tear him away from his family, but ones that he feels are necessary if they are ever to have a chance at a better life. The seeds of resistance are sown, not just in Tom's heart, but in the hearts of many others who, like him, are tired of being oppressed. The sense of inevitability begins to rise, the idea that change is coming, even if it must be fought for. The journey is far from over, but the Joad's journey now carries the weight of a larger cause, one that transcends their individual struggles and speaks to the collective plight of the oppressed. As the Joads continue their desperate journey through California, the stark reality of their situation grows increasingly clear. The promises of a better life in the West begin to seem like cruel illusions, and their hopes are replaced by the harsh truth that they are trapped in a cycle of exploitation and suffering. The Joads, like so many others in their position, find themselves fighting not just for survival, but for their very dignity. In the face of this overwhelming adversity, they learn to adapt in ways they never thought possible, drawing strength from each other, even as the world around them becomes more and more unforgiving. At the heart of the family's struggles lies Ma Joad, whose resilience and determination serve as the emotional foundation for the entire clan. Her strength continues to shine, not just in her ability to keep the family together, but in her ability to maintain hope, even when all seems lost. As the family moves from one temporary camp to another, it is Ma who keeps the family spirit alive, encouraging them to hold on to their humanity and to each other. But even Ma, who has always been a symbol of unwavering strength, begins to feel the crushing weight of the world's cruelty. The journey has taken its toll on her, physically and emotionally, and she is increasingly aware of the toll it is taking on her children and grandchildren. Yet, she refuses to let despair take root in her heart, knowing that it is through the unity of the family that they will be able to endure the coming hardships. Rose of Sharon, now heavily pregnant, becomes a poignant symbol of the Joad's struggle to survive. Her condition, once a source of hope, now serves as a grim reminder of their plight. As her pregnancy advances, her health deteriorates, and she is increasingly vulnerable to the harsh conditions of the migrant camps. The lack of proper medical care and the unsanitary conditions only exacerbate her situation. Her once bright and hopeful demeanor fades as she struggles with her physical and emotional challenges. Rose of Sharon's journey becomes a painful reflection of the broader themes of exploitation and the fragility of human existence, as the Joad's dreams of a better future grow ever more distant. For Tom Joad, the realization that survival alone will not be enough to free them from their suffering begins to take root. His sense of justice becomes sharper, more focused, and he begins to understand that the true enemy is not just the landowners, but the very system that perpetuates their power and keeps families like his own in bondage. Tom's growing sense of political consciousness pushes him further into conflict with the forces that oppress them. He understands that the only way to fight back is through collective action, through solidarity with other workers who are facing the same hardships. The seeds of resistance begin to take hold in his heart, and he begins to see that the fight for a better life is not just a personal battle, but a collective struggle for the rights of all workers. This growing political awareness is reflected in the experiences of the other migrant workers the Joads meet along the way. In the camps and fields, they hear stories of other families who, like them, have been driven from their land by the greed of the agricultural industry. They are told of the landowners' ruthless tactics, cutting wages, employing migrant labor to drive down costs, and using fear to keep workers in line. The workers are pitted against each other, forced into a competition for the most basic resources, while the landowners and wealthy businessmen profit off their misery. It becomes increasingly clear to Tom that the system is rigged to ensure that the workers are kept in a permanent state of subjugation, with no hope of escaping their poverty or improving their lives. In this environment of exploitation, the Joads begin to see the cracks in the system. They realize that the landowners and the government are not interested in the well-being of the workers. In fact, they are actively working to ensure that the workers remain powerless. The government provides little assistance to the migrant families, and the landowners continue to tighten their grip on the workers, offering only the bare minimum to keep them alive while reaping the profits of their labor. The Joad's growing awareness of this injustice fuels their determination to resist, even if it means making difficult sacrifices along the way. As tensions rise, the Joad's journey takes on an increasingly tense and uncertain tone. The migrant camps become more crowded and desperate, and the Joads are forced to confront the fact that survival alone may not be enough. Their struggle is not just one of basic needs. It is a fight for human dignity, for a sense of belonging, and for the right to live free from oppression. The realization that they are not just fighting for themselves, but for the rights of all workers, begins to motivate them more than ever. Ma Joad's role in this collective struggle becomes even more vital as the story unfolds. As the family's leader, she is the one who holds them together, who keeps them grounded in the face of overwhelming odds. Ma's strength is evident not just in her actions, but in her words, as she speaks to the workers around her, urging them to unite and to stand up for their rights. She becomes a figurehead for the workers' cause, a symbol of resistance against the forces that seek to crush them. Her message is simple but powerful. They must stand together if they are to have any chance of survival or a better future. As the Joads continue to struggle in the face of overwhelming odds, their journey becomes more than just a fight for survival. It becomes a fight for justice, for the right to live with dignity and respect. Their growing sense of unity and purpose fuels their determination to continue, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. With every passing day, they come to realize that their struggle is not just for them, but for all migrant workers, for all those who have been oppressed and exploited by the system. In the midst of their struggle, the Joads remain unwavering in their commitment to one another. Through the pain and suffering, they find solace in each other's presence, drawing strength from their shared experiences and their love for one another. This familial bond, forged in the fire of adversity, becomes their greatest asset in the battle against the system that seeks to break them. It is through their unity that they find the strength to resist, to keep fighting, and to hold on to the hope that one day their struggle will lead to a better, more just world. As the Joad's journey continues, the relentless oppression and exploitation of migrant workers become increasingly apparent. Their hope, once so full of potential, is now overshadowed by the stark realities of a system designed to crush their spirit. Yet, despite the ever-present hardships, the Joads find themselves continuing the struggle, driven by a deep-seated sense of resilience. It is clear that the path ahead will not be easy, but each family member, whether they are aware of it or not, remains part of a larger collective movement that holds the promise of change, even if that change is yet unseen. As Rose of Sharon's pregnancy nears its end, the weight of their circumstances becomes even more pronounced. She, like her family, has held on to the hope of a better future in California, only to find herself trapped in a hostile environment where her health deteriorates and her dreams of a safe and secure life are at risk of slipping away. Her vulnerability is a powerful symbol of the plight of all the migrant workers, whose labor is vital to the agricultural industry, but whose lives are expendable in the eyes of the system. Rose's physical decline is exacerbated by the neglect of the authorities and the indifference of the landowners, who view her and her fellow migrants as little more than tools to be used and discarded. The lack of medical care and the poor living conditions in the camps only serve to intensify her suffering, making her situation more desperate by the day. Meanwhile, Tom Joad's sense of injustice and political awareness deepens. His experiences in the camps and with fellow migrant workers have opened his eyes to the systemic nature of their oppression. He begins to realize that the exploitation of migrant labor is not simply the result of individual greed, but part of a broader, more deeply entrenched economic system that serves the interests of the wealthy while keeping the working class in a state of perpetual poverty. Tom's frustration grows as he witnesses the efforts of the landowners to keep workers divided, using fear and competition to prevent them from banding together in solidarity. In his mind, the only way to achieve change is through collective action, by uniting the workers to challenge the system that oppresses them. This sense of collective struggle becomes a central theme as the Joad's journey takes them deeper into the heart of the migrant experience. They encounter more families who, like them, are struggling to survive and make a living. but also increasingly begin to see the way in which the landowners have sought to pit workers against one another. The camps grow ever more overcrowded, the conditions increasingly squalid. Tensions rise, and what little hope the Joads had for a better future in California begins to fade. But in the midst of this hopelessness, there are moments of solidarity and camaraderie among the workers, fleeting glimpses of the strength that can arise when they come together in the face of adversity. The Joads' experiences are compounded by the brutal violence and discrimination they encounter at every turn. The authorities, paid to protect the interests of the landowners, are hostile and unhelpful. The workers, desperate for work and unable to find it, are often forced into labor conditions that are not just exploitative, but degrading. They are seen as little more than machines to be used, worked until they break, and then discarded. In the eyes of the landowners, they are expendable, and any attempt to challenge this order is met with swift and violent retaliation. Amidst the chaos and frustration, Ma Joad's strength shines through. She becomes the emotional anchor for her family, her deep well of resilience providing a source of comfort in the darkest of times. But even Ma cannot escape the toll that the journey is taking on her. She too is weary, tired of the endless struggle and the emotional cost of keeping her family together. Her health is declining, and the weight of the responsibility she bears is beginning to wear her down. But despite these challenges, Ma refuses to give up. She knows that her family depends on her, and it is her unshakable belief in the importance of unity that keeps the Joads moving forward. Her unwavering commitment to her family's survival provides the emotional backbone of the narrative, underscoring the importance of human connection even in the most brutal of circumstances. Despite the hardships, there are still moments of joy and tenderness that provide brief respite from the overwhelming difficulties. These fleeting moments of human connection are some of the most poignant in the novel. Whether it's a quiet conversation shared between Ma and Tom, a brief smile exchanged between Rose of Sharon and her family, or a simple meal shared around a campfire, these moments of love and solidarity stand in stark contrast to the cruelty and inhumanity that the Joads face from the world around them. They serve as a reminder that even in the most dire of circumstances, human dignity can still survive as long as people continue to care for one another. But as the Joads continue their trek westward, the realization sets in that California may not be the promised land they had hoped for. The closer they get to their destination, the more they encounter resistance from those already established there, other migrant families who are also struggling to survive in a hostile environment, as well as the landowners who are determined to keep their labor costs down at any cost. The workers are divided, unable to unite against the common enemy. And with this realization, Tom's sense of purpose becomes even clearer. The battle for survival is not just an individual struggle, but a collective one. His journey takes on a new urgency as he becomes determined to find a way to unite the workers and give them the tools they need to fight back against the system. The end of the Joad's journey remains uncertain, but their fight for survival and justice continues to evolve. Each new obstacle, each new setback, is met with resistance, with the family refusing to bow to the forces that would see them broken. The Joad's struggle becomes the struggle of all migrant workers, a fight for justice and dignity that is rooted in the fundamental belief that people have the right to control their own lives and destinies. The work that they are doing is vital to their survival, to their sense of humanity, and to the larger movement that is slowly but surely beginning to take shape across California. Through the Joad's journey, Steinbeck paints a vivid portrait of the strength of the human spirit, one that refuses to be crushed, no matter the odds. As the Joad family's odyssey reaches its somber conclusion, the themes of sacrifice, resilience, and collective struggle resonate more profoundly than ever before. The final chapters of The Grapes of Wrath provide a stark, heart-wrenching depiction of the realities faced by the disenfranchised migrant workers. While the Joad's journey westward may have started with the hope of finding a better life in California, by the end, the harshness of their existence has turned that initial optimism into a grim acceptance of the struggles they must face. Tom Joad, once an idealist driven by a sense of justice, becomes increasingly aware of the limitations and complexities of his situation. After killing a man in self-defense and being forced to go into hiding, Tom's evolution mirrors the larger transformation of the migrant workers. He has moved from an individualistic sense of survival to a deeper understanding of the collective struggle. Tom's interactions with others become more selfless, and he recognizes that the battle for dignity and survival cannot be fought alone. As he leaves his family to escape the law, he tells Ma that he will carry the spirit of the family with him, but that the fight for justice must transcend individual experience. His last words to her, urging her to keep the spirit, encapsulate the transformation of his character and his growing understanding that the struggle for justice is larger than any one person's fight. Ma Joad, the emotional backbone of the family, also experiences a profound transformation. Her unwavering strength, which has carried the family through much hardship, is tested like never before in the final moments of the novel. When faced with the uncertainty of the future and the increasing fragmentation of the family, Ma remains resolute in her belief that family, unity, and hope will carry them forward. Her dedication to her family has always been her driving force. But now, in the face of a seemingly insurmountable future, it is her unwavering belief in the power of human connection that sustains her. Ma embodies the resilience of the working class, never giving up, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Her journey from a woman who believed in the security of family to one who understands the necessity of collective action underscores one of Steinbeck's most powerful themes: the idea that solidarity and mutual support are the only means by which the poor and oppressed can hope to survive. Rose of Sharon, whose pregnancy has been a central point of tension throughout the novel, faces the most tragic, yet ultimately redemptive moment of her journey. After the death of her child during childbirth, Rose of Sharon's transformation becomes symbolic of the larger theme of selflessness that permeates the novel's conclusion. Her personal loss, which could have easily broken her spirit, instead leads her to a moment of profound generosity. When she encounters a starving man in the camp, Rose offers him the milk from her breast, a powerful gesture of empathy, care, and shared humanity. This final act of charity encapsulates the fundamental theme of the novel, that even in the face of overwhelming hardship, it is the ability to care for others, to give selflessly, that marks the true strength of the human spirit. The death of the Joad's infant and the subsequent events highlight the emotional toll the family has endured. Their dreams of prosperity and safety have been dashed, and their struggle for survival has become increasingly desperate. Yet, in their darkest hour, the Joads still find the will to carry on. The closing scenes of the novel are filled with a sense of unresolved struggle, but there is also a glimmer of hope that the Joads and the larger community of migrant workers will continue to fight for their rights and their dignity. Through their sacrifices and perseverance, they leave a legacy that may one day lead to change. The novel ends on a note of uncertainty, with the Joads continuing their journey toward an unknown future. However, Steinbeck leaves the reader with a sense of possibility. Though the immediate prospects for the Joad family are grim, there is a larger, collective struggle that transcends their individual hardships. The closing scenes underscore the importance of solidarity and the belief that even in the face of systemic injustice, there is the potential for change. The image of Rose of Sharon nursing the starving man is a profound symbol of the possibility of redemption, not only for the Joad family, but for the migrant community as a whole. Steinbeck's portrayal of the Joads and their journey reflects the universal struggle of the poor and disenfranchised. Through the characters' experiences, he paints a vivid picture of the social, economic, and political forces that oppress the working class. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them, the Joad's journey remains a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Their struggle is not only for survival, but for dignity and justice. It is this struggle that, in the end, gives their lives meaning and significance. The book's impact is far-reaching, resonating not only with those who have experienced poverty and oppression firsthand, but with all those who believe in the importance of social justice and collective action. The Grapes of Wrath remains a powerful critique of the economic and social systems that perpetuate inequality, and its themes continue to resonate today. The novel's exploration of the migrant experience, the dehumanization of labor, and the importance of community solidarity remains as relevant now as it was when the book was first published. Steinbeck's narrative is filled with a profound sense of empathy for the suffering of others, and his depiction of the Joad's journey serves as both a specific chronicle of their plight and a broader commentary on the struggles of the working class. His ability to portray the individual and collective experience with such humanity and depth is what makes The Grapes of Wrath one of the most important works of American literature. As the Joads continue their journey, uncertain of what lies ahead, the novel's conclusion challenges the reader to reflect on the broader implications of the story. The struggle for justice is ongoing, and while the future remains uncertain, the possibility of change, of a better world founded on empathy, solidarity, and equality, is something that no amount of hardship can extinguish. Through the Joad's resilience, Steinbeck leaves us with the belief that even in the darkest times, there is always the potential for hope and redemption. The Grapes of Wrath serves as a powerful reminder of the strength that can arise when people come together in the face of injustice, and the enduring importance of compassion and solidarity in the fight for a better world. In conclusion, The Grapes of Wrath stands as one of the most powerful and enduring works of American literature, a searing exploration of the human condition in the face of societal and economic collapse. Through the Joad family's harrowing journey, John Steinbeck paints a poignant portrait of the struggles of the disenfranchised and dispossessed, whose lives were upended by the forces of greed, injustice, and systemic oppression. At its core, the novel is about survival, but also about the ways in which individuals, bound by suffering and hope, can come together to form a collective strength that transcends their individual hardships. The novel's impact lies in its ability to depict not only the personal sacrifices of the Joad family, but also the larger social and economic forces that shape their lives. Steinbeck's portrayal of the migrant experience, where hope often turns to despair, yet resilience refuses to be extinguished, remains as relevant today as it was when the novel was first published. His critique of the exploitation of the working class and his call for empathy, solidarity, and social justice strike a chord in a world where these issues remain pressing. What makes The Grapes of Wrath timeless is its universality. While it is deeply rooted in the specific historical moment of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, its themes of poverty, injustice, and the quest for dignity resonate across cultures and eras. The Joad family's journey is not just one of physical survival, but a metaphorical journey toward a deeper understanding of the human spirit, one that refuses to be broken, even when the world seems intent on crushing it. The novel also highlights the importance of community and the enduring belief that through collective effort, change is possible. In the face of oppression, the Joads find strength in their unity, a reminder that individual struggles are often part of a larger fight for social change. This message is as urgent today as it was when Steinbeck wrote the novel, underscoring the necessity of empathy and collective action in addressing the challenges of inequality and injustice. Steinbeck's compassion for his characters, his profound understanding of human suffering, and his unflinching gaze at the stark realities of life for the poor and marginalized make The Grapes of Wrath not only an emotional and powerful story, but a work of social conscience. It compels readers to reflect on the nature of suffering and survival, the significance of human connection, and the fight for a more just and equitable world. In the end, The Grapes of Wrath is not just a tale of hardship, but one of profound human dignity. The sacrifices made by the Joad family and their unwavering belief in a better future serve as a testament to the enduring power of hope, solidarity, and the quest for justice. It reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the strength of the human spirit, when fueled by compassion and unity, can light the way toward a better tomorrow. And in this, the novel's impact endures, urging us to confront the injustices of our own time and to strive for a world that is not defined by division, but by our shared humanity.